Hello. Today we're going to talk about the basics of arrays in PHP. This is applicable to arrays in other languages as well. I am not going to get into array functions, of which there are many. I'm just going to try and help you understand what you need to know to start working with arrays, and if you end up needing to do some specific things, well, there's a lot of resources out there. I wouldn't mind creating something on the subject, but that's just not where I'm going here. I'm going one slide and one set of examples. So, types of arrays is really what I'm trying to get at here. So first off, what is an array? An array is a singular, you could think of it as a variable. It's not, but it's a reference to a location in memory that stores multiple values. So a variable stores a single value, an array stores multiple values. You could, I guess, live your whole life without arrays, but it wouldn't be in your best interest to do so. I'll show you what I mean by that shortly. So if you're going to store a bunch of related information, well, maybe an array is the tool for you. So when you talk about arrays, you're going to talk about key value pairs. So an array stores a bunch of values, much as like a bunch of variables would store a bunch of values. And the keys are what are the references to the individual values in the array. I will get into that soon enough. You usually know you're looking at an array when you see square brackets, and the keys are the things that are in the square brackets. Now I'm saying things like things, right? Because I have to keep it very general, as you'll see shortly. Another thing that's interesting about arrays is they are not print friendly. So generally with a variable, you can print it out, right? If it's a number, you print it out and you see the number. If it's a string, you print it out and you see the string. Since an array is storing a bunch of values, you can't really just print them out. You can print out a singular value, but then, you know, there's a whole world of nested arrays, and there's associative arrays and indexed arrays, so you can't just press print on an array, generally speaking. Nor can you just reference them as such. So let's talk about those keys. A lot of our discussion today is going to be about keys. Values is actually kind of the more straightforward thing. A value is anytime you got an assignment statement, right? It's on the right-hand side. So it's kind of like that, but a key is what's different. So there's two kinds of arrays out there. There are indexed arrays and there are associative arrays. In an indexed array, and this is probably the more common one, I guess, in the whole world, the big scheme of these things, the keys are going to be integers, and they are going to be zero indexed. Zero indexed means that the first value is going to be in position 0. Now, we as humans, when we count, we start at 1, but machines start at 0. So that's what zero indexed means. You have crossed paths with this when you learned something about strings, which you probably know something about strings if you're watching this video. So like the thing in the character in the first place of a string is spot 0. That's what zero indexed means. So the first position is 0. The last one is going to be, like if there's 10 things in an array, the last thing is going to be in spot 9. So that's what zero indexed means. So in an indexed array, the keys don't really mean anything. They're just positions, which is kind of what they always are. In an associative array, the keys have descriptive names, not numbers. So like a key in an associative array might be F name or L name or age or something like that. And another example of an associative array are these superglobals. This is not a good first video to ever watch in PHP. I imagine you probably know what I mean by superglobals, like $_get, post, cookie, session, server. Those are kind of unavoidable in PHP. Those are good examples of superglobal arrays because the keys have names like PHP self. And all right, I've talked about it enough. Let's go see some examples in practice. Like I said, I'm not really telling you how to initialize these or how to manipulate them, because that would be a video of itself and probably would be a lot of videos. And so I'm not really trying to do that right now. So let's look at those examples. All right, so I'm going to start up here. This is one way that you can initialize an array. So my array is called months. I'm calling this function called array. This is a constructor. It creates an array. And so basically what this means is the first value it's going to store is January, the second one's going to be February, then March, then April, then May. And you notice those are the values. There's no references to the keys. And since I'm not specifying the keys, they're just going to get assigned. That first thing is going to be in spot 0, that's going to be in spot 1, that's going to be in spot 2. There are 12 months, so that's going to be spot 0, that's going to be spot 11, everything in between. I think you get it at this point. So that is an indexed array where the values have numeric values. I don't know what I just said. The values have numeric keys. So this is kind of the same thing as you could do. This is what it would look like if you used variables. And you can see why this is a bad idea. Month 1 is January. Month 2 is February. I don't think anyone wants to make 12 separate variables, one for each month. It'd just be ridiculous to manage. So instead, I make one variable and I store 12 values. And so that's an indexed array. And so I cannot print out months. That's not going to work. I mean, I guess I could, don't worry, I'm going to refresh. It's going to do that, array to string conversion, because it's like, well, what one do you want to print out? And so if you want to print something out, what you can do is reference a spot, like spot 0. Spot 0 is going to give me the first thing in the array. And that I can do. And I said I wasn't going to get into this, but this is as far as I'm going with it. You can manipulate these things. You don't have to be using that constructor. There's many ways to populate an array. I could say months 0 is equal to Jan, right? So I can assign it a value. I'm just trying to emphasize that idea of square brackets, right? Those things in the square brackets are the keys. If those are numeric values, then what we're talking about is an indexed array. So now that thing's going to be Jan. So you see I changed the value. I don't want to talk about ways to populate arrays because there's actually a lot of ways to do it. So that's an indexed array. This right here is an associative array. So notice how much more difficult this is to set up. So here, starts off the same. I'm calling it messy months, using that same constructor, but I'm using, so this is the key, and this is the value. Note that syntax. Now, if that looks awkward and difficult to set up, it is. I would say, in my experience with PHP, associative arrays usually get generated for you. So, like, you'll handle a form submission, or maybe you get some JSON that you're trying to turn into, right? I mean, it's like the data will oftentimes be presented to you in the format of an associative array. So you just need to know how to deal with it as opposed to creating it. So, but notice here, my first key is January and the value is 31. And my second key is February and the value is 28. So when you're using an associative array, you kind of pass in more information because the keys actually have some meaning here. Whereas when they're just like 0 and 1, they don't have any meaning. It's arbitrary. These are not better. That's just what they are. They're kind of easier to work with, but they're harder to create. And so if I want to mess around with this, let me get rid of that mess. If I want to print something out, I'm going to have to say, I don't want to type that. It just seems like I'm asking for trouble. So messy months. If I were to try something like that, right, I'm going to try treating it like an indexed array, because that would be an index position. And that doesn't work so well. Instead, what I'd have to do is reference the key called January. And you see, if you were hardly following the first example, at this point you're probably like, what? So the key was called January, and the value was 31. Right, so in an indexed array, the keys are numeric values. In an associative array, the keys are going to be meaningful, probably strings. Let me show you one more thing. So the next video I'm going to make is how to display arrays. So I'll just kind of show you that right now. So you can't do an echo on messy months. And in my next video, I'm going to show you how to deal with that. Long story short, there's a function called printr, which is exactly defined to solve this problem. And in my next video, show you a little bit about how to do that. Notice when you do a printr, it's strictly for debugging purposes, but it shows you the key value pairs. And so at this point, I've shown you an example of an indexed array and an associative array. Difference between the two being that an indexed array has numeric keys, and in an associative array, the keys are strings, and they're actually meaningful. The other thing that I blew off is these super global arrays. See this printr right here? This is where I really wanted to go with this. Super global are those pre-existing arrays like server, and if I do a printr on server, that's a mess, and that's why I'm going to make a video on how to display these things better. But do you see how I've got a bunch of keys, and they've got these stringish names, but the keys provide a clue into what the value is representing. So these are good. They're just kind of a pain to set up, so we usually end up working with indexed arrays. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit about index versus associative arrays. Thanks for watching.